A startup claimed it could change medicine. Just one drop of blood. Hundreds of tests instantly. No needles, no painful vials, just a tiny finger prick. The promise sounded revolutionary. Fast results, cheaper healthcare for everyone. Hospitals were interested. Patients were curious. Investors were paying attention. The company was called Theranos, and it claimed to reinvent the laboratory from a small box. The technology had a simple promise: run dozens of tests from a single drop, in minutes, not days. If it worked, it would change diagnostics forever and make billions. The founder was young, confident, and incredibly persuasive. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes, and she said Theranos would transform healthcare, the way Apple transformed computers. Silicon Valley loved the story. Investors lined up, money poured in. Soon the company's valuation exploded, past $1 billion, then far beyond. At its peak, Theranos was worth $9 billion, and Elizabeth Holmes became the youngest self-made female billionaire. But there was one problem. Almost no one outside the company had actually seen the technology work. She was only 19, a Stanford student with a bold idea and enormous ambition. Elizabeth Holmes believed blood testing could be reinvented. Smaller, faster, cheaper. Instead of traditional labs, she imagined tiny machines running hundreds of tests instantly. The idea sounded revolutionary, and Silicon Valley loves revolution, especially in healthcare. Holmes dropped out of Stanford to build the company full-time, just like the tech legends before her. She even adopted the same look: black turtleneck, quiet intensity. The comparison was obvious. People started calling her the next Steve Jobs. Investors listened closely, because if this worked, medicine would change forever. Powerful names joined the board: former generals, former secretaries of state. The company barely revealed how the technology worked, but confidence filled the room. Holmes spoke with certainty. The machines were revolutionary and almost ready. Investors believed the vision, and the company's value kept climbing. But inside the labs, the technology was struggling to work. The story was irresistible. A young founder, a revolutionary idea. One drop of blood, hundreds of medical tests, in minutes. Investors started calling, because if it worked, it would transform healthcare. Money began pouring in, quietly at first, then very quickly. Some of the most powerful investors in America wanted in. Elizabeth Holmes stood confidently in her black turtleneck and promised a medical revolution. Her vision sounded simple: replace massive laboratories with a small testing machine. The company called it the Edison device, a tiny box with enormous promises. Retail giants started paying attention. Theranos signed a deal with Walgreens. Blood testing centers opened inside pharmacies across Arizona. Patients walked in expecting faster testing and revolutionary healthcare. Meanwhile, the valuation kept climbing, past $9 billion. But inside the laboratories, scientists knew the machines weren't working. Inside the laboratories, the machines were struggling. Results weren't reliable. Some blood tests failed. Others produced wildly inconsistent data. Engineers tried again and again and again. But the technology was far more complicated than the company admitted. Running hundreds of tests from one tiny drop of blood was incredibly difficult. Some scientists inside Theranos started raising concerns about the results. But speaking up inside the company was dangerous. Employees described a culture of secrecy and strict control. Elizabeth Holmes continued appearing confident in her black turtleneck. Publicly, the company insisted the technology was working perfectly. Privately, scientists were still trying to make the machines function. Outside, investors still believed the revolution was real. But eventually, someone inside the company decided to talk. In 2015, rumors started spreading outside the company. Former employees began telling reporters something wasn't right. They said the machines couldn't run the tests the company promised. One journalist started asking questions no one else would ask. John Carreyrou from the Wall Street Journal began investigating Theranos. He spoke to scientists, former workers, and medical experts. The stories were similar. The technology did not work. Theranos denied everything. Executives insisted the reports were wrong. Elizabeth Holmes appeared calm. Black turtleneck. Same confident voice. But inside the company, lawyers and executives were under pressure. Employees were warned not to talk to the press. Then the article finally published, and everything changed. The story went public, and the world started paying attention. After the investigation came out, serious questions started spreading across the entire medical industry. Doctors wanted clear proof that the blood tests actually worked the way promised. Government regulators began looking much closer at the company's laboratory procedures and results. Inspectors found major problems with equipment, testing methods, and overall accuracy. Some blood test results had been completely wrong, in some cases dangerously wrong. Walgreens started asking very serious questions about its partnership with Theranos. Soon after that, testing centers inside Walgreens pharmacies began quietly shutting down. Patients started losing confidence. Investors became nervous. The story around Theranos was changing. Elizabeth Holmes stayed calm in public. Black turtleneck. Same steady, confident voice. In interviews, she insisted the company would fix every problem they faced. But inside the company, the pressure on employees kept building every day. The valuation that once reached over $9 billion started falling very fast. And for the first time, people began seriously asking, was the whole thing a lie? By 2018, the pressure on Theranos had become impossible to ignore. Regulators, investors, and reporters were watching closely. The company was no longer operating in the shadows. Federal investigators began looking into whether the company had misled the public about its technology. Questions were now coming from every direction. Former employees started speaking openly about problems inside the laboratories that had been hidden for years. The government accused Theranos of misleading doctors, patients, and investors about its testing. The company's technology was no longer trusted by regulators or partners. Walgreens ended its relationship after shutting down every testing center connected to Theranos. Investors who once believed the vision began realizing the numbers didn't make sense. Elizabeth Holmes appeared in public wearing the same black turtleneck, still speaking with confidence. But behind the scenes, the company was running out of time and money. In 2018, federal prosecutors charged Holmes and other executives with fraud. The trial would take years, but the company itself was already finished. Theranos shut down completely, ending one of the biggest startup stories in Silicon Valley. The promise was gone. The company was gone. But the questions were not. The investigation didn't just damage the company. It changed how people saw the entire story. Trust was gone. Regulators banned Theranos from running blood testing labs. The technology was no longer allowed to operate. Investors who once believed the vision lost hundreds of millions of dollars. The $9 billion valuation disappeared. The company tried to survive, but partnerships were gone, and the pressure kept growing. Employees left, offices closed. The future the company promised never arrived. In 2018, federal prosecutors charged Elizabeth Holmes with multiple counts of fraud. The trial would take years, but the company itself was already finished. Theranos shut down completely, ending one of the biggest startup stories in Silicon Valley. The case became a warning about hype, power, and believing a story too quickly. Investors wanted the next revolution. The public wanted a miracle. No one wanted to ask hard questions, but the truth always shows up. Eventually, the numbers matter. Eventually, the facts matter. Theranos wasn't the first company to collapse under pressure, and it won't be the last. If you want to see how other empires fell, watch the next episode of Boardroom Fallout. Another breakdown is already waiting.